Today I want to welcome Reverend Laura Horton Ludwig, who will be doing Drinking from the Well of Spirit, an introduction to shamanic journeying. Are you ready to reclaim your power, sparkle, and joy? Join Laura for a transformative online journey designed to help you connect directly with spirit through safe and ethical shamanic journeying methods. Whether you're new to this spiritual exploration or a seasoned seeker, this workshop will equip you with the tools and techniques to tap into your inner wisdom and build a life that is authentic and joyful. Since 2005, Reverend Laura Horton Ludwig has guided hundreds of people on their spiritual journeys, helping them connect with their true selves and the world around them. With nearly 2 decades of experience serving as a minister in Unitarian Universalist congregations around the United States, Reverend Laura now offers spiritual guidance, coaching, and healing through her private practice. Her passion for empowering sensitive souls shines through in her teachings, and she is excited to share her knowledge with you. And here's what you'll learn. An introduction to shamanic journeying. Discover the foundational principles of shamanic journeying and how it can be used as a powerful tool for personal transformation. Also, do it safe and ethically. Learn how to engage in it in a safe and ethical way, ensuring that your exploration is respectful and grounded. Connecting with spirit. Explore techniques to connect directly with spirit, accessing guidance and insights that can support your spiritual growth, and also gain practical tools to integrate shamanic journeying into your daily life, enhancing your well-being and personal empowerment. Reverend Laura is a seasoned spiritual guide with a rich background in Unitarian Universalism and shamanic practices. She has led numerous groups and workshops, helping individuals deepen their spiritual practices and connect with their true selves. Her teachings are influenced by our primary shamanic teacher, Nan Moss, who's a longtime Rowe presenter. Based in Williamsburg, Virginia, Laura lives with her husband, their beloved pets, and the many trees and wild creatures that share their land. So, Laura, I've done a lot of talking so far.
Hi,
Let's,
Fia. Thank you for that
hi.
gracious introduction. I
Well,
appreciate it.
let's get you talking. I've got some questions for you.
Great.
Can you give us a brief overview of what shamanic journeying is and how it can benefit those who are new to it?
Yeah, sure. So, in essence, shamanic journeying is a spiritual practice that is very ancient. It goes back many, many thousands of years. And the practice is one that allows you to use your mind to connect to what my tradition calls compassionate helping spirits, fully compassionate spirit beings who want to help us and guide us along our way. And when you do this practice, when you learn how to connect with these compassionate helping spirits, you can ask for their help with whatever is going on in your life and in the life of our world so that you can get their support. And many people have experience with guided meditation. I would say that's quite similar to what we're doing in shamanic journeying, though in my experience, the journey practice can take you much deeper. So maybe I'll just set it down there. I'm sure we'll have lots more to say, but that's a little beginning.
Okay. How did you first become interested in shamanic journeying and what inspired you to incorporate it into your spiritual guidance work?
Oh, thank you, Fia. You know, it was about 12 years ago now, I think, that I was going through kind of a tough time in my life. I had some physical health challenges, and it was just a rough time emotionally. And at that time, I was working with a new spiritual director, someone I was working with one-on-one to support my spiritual life. And one day, kind of out of the blue, she mentioned that she was doing some training in shamanic journeying. And I was like, wait, what? Do white people get to do that? Like I was like, what are we even talking about here? And she told me that yes, indeed, it is possible for people like me, of European descent to engage in shamanic practices in a way that is ethical and respectful and also really safe. So that was fascinating to me, and I started to learn more about it. And I learned about this tradition that is my home today, the tradition of core shamanism. And I'd love to share just a little bit about that to help flesh out this picture of what are we doing here. So, core shamanism was founded by Michael Harner, who was back in the 60s and 70s anthropologist based at Berkeley. And he was doing field work in the Amazon, studying the religious traditions of the Kanibo and Jivaro people. And basically, what happened to him is he was hanging out with some shamans in those communities, and they invited him to kind of try out their shamanic practices. And he's like, well, I'm here to learn. Why not? And so he had this experience of like, whoa, he was a completely secular person, but he had this incredible spiritual experience through the practices of these communities that he was there to, in theory, academically study. So he basically had his head exploded, and it was like, oh my gosh, what now? And so the rest of his life he really devoted to building a bridge between secular Western academia and these incredible practices that he had learned in these indigenous communities. What he taught is he worked with shamanic practitioners all over the world. He discovered over time that a lot of cultures who were separated by geography, had no direct communication with each other, were nonetheless practicing in a very similar way in some core ways. At the same time, he was aware that people from a Western background, if you trace it back enough, if you go far enough back in anybody's ancestry on this planet, you will find that their ancient ancestors practiced in a shamanic way. But of course, in Western culture, most of us, the direct lineage was broken long ago. So we have no direct connection to those practices. And yet, Michael Harner wanted to offer a way for those of us who have been cut off from our traditional lineage to experience these practices in a way that respected the cultures and the people that he learned from. And so in core shamanic practice, we don't steal anybody's rituals. We are practicing basic techniques that are known throughout the world. So, okay, I just gave you a huge brain dump, Fia. And so I wanted to share with our listeners just that bit of basic information. And so now I want to go back to my own experience. So that I learned all that before I decided whether I wanted to try this practice. And that helped me feel like, oh, okay, I'm doing this in a way that feels okay, that feels like in line with my ethics. So back to that, my spiritual director helped me try my first shamanic journey, which was a classic beginner journey, to find a helping spirit who wanted to basically like befriend me and work with me as a guide. In this first journey, I ended up meeting a bird, a spirit that appeared to me as a bird, and I saw the spirit with a broken wing, dragging its wing along the ground. The bird said to me, you think that you're like this with this broken wing. But then it flew up into the air and it was completely healed. And the bird said to me, actually, you're like this. You're whole. You are well. You are not broken. And that message it was just exactly what I needed to hear. And so that was the beginning of my story with this practice of shamanic journeying. And it's just continued to unfold for me ever since. So that's a little bit about me.
That's so beautiful. Does that bird still come to you?
Yes. Yeah. We've been
So
working
it's a,
together a long time. Yeah.
that's great. Okay, what motivated you to bring your workshop, Drinking from the Well of Spirit, to Rowe, UU Camp and Conference Center community?
Oh, yes. Well, so I've been teaching shamanic journeying to Unitarian Universalists and others for years now in congregational settings. I partner as well with the Soul Matters sharing circle. I lead shamanic groups focused in on the Soul Matters monthly themes, and that's been delightful. And I've always been aware of the Rowe Center as a place that was offering just amazing workshops. And I love now that we have the ability to do workshops like these online. I love a good in-person workshop, don't get me wrong, but it's so much more accessible and affordable to a whole lot of different people. And so it's just wonderful to be able to connect with the community at Rowe and share this practice, which has been incredibly life-giving to me. So that's what brings me to Rowe, and it's very exciting to be partnering with you all.
Well, I've been hosting the Zoom meetings since the pandemic for Row, and
Mm.
we have had people from all over the world coming to these online sessions. So it's been really wonderful outreach.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
So glad to know
hopefully,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully yours will reach people all over the place too.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I need to understand what exactly you mean by safe and ethical practices.
Oh, yeah. So this is really important. Let's talk about ethics first. I've already touched on it a little bit, but let's talk some more about how we steer clear of cultural misappropriation. That's the big issue that a lot of people arrive wondering about, and rightly so. So, cultural misappropriation happens when people from a dominant culture adopt the cultural practices, symbols, knowledge from another culture without permission, right? And so that might include like taking a traditional ritual unique to a certain group of people and then like practicing it as if it's your own. It might include taking somebody's traditional prayers or like a religious practice like the sweat lodge, for example, is one that many people might be familiar with. So I want to say, first of all, very clearly that it is not okay for a white person to steal the religious practices of a Native American group and call themselves a shaman. That is not what we are doing. No. So we're just going to start there. And again, as I mentioned, the tradition that I practice in, the tradition of core shamanism, strongly emphasizes respect for indigenous cultures and high ethical standards in the work when we're working with individuals and groups. So again, the practices taught by core shamanism that I'm going to be sharing in this workshop are not specific to any particular traditional indigenous culture. They are a synthesis of very basic practices learned with permission from traditional healers in many cultures, but we're not stealing anybody's secret stuff. So I just want to be very, very clear about that. This is my experience. This is not something that core shamanism folks usually talk about because they're not in the world that we're in, the world of Unitarian Universalist spirituality. But what I want to share is that shamanic practices are widely found in religious cultures of the West as well, especially in the mystical tradition. And so, in my view, there are all sorts of Christian mystics. I would name, for example, Howard Thurman, Julian of Norwich, who saw amazing visions, Hildegard of Bingen, Carl Jung, many others throughout the centuries. And I would actually say Jesus himself as well. All of those people had experiences that were very similar to the experiences of shamanic practitioners in other cultures. They were seeing visions, they were feeling powerful, powerful connections to all living things, to the web of life. And sometimes they did healings that others considered to be remarkable and somehow miraculous. So I want to just emphasize that the threads of shamanic practice emerge over and over again in our Western religious traditions as well, even though we're not used to thinking of them in that way. So that's what I wanted to share with you all today about ethics. And now let's talk about safety. Okay. So, first of all, In the methods that I'm going to be teaching, we are going to be using the beat of a drum or a rattle to facilitate the journeys. And we're not using any sort of what my tradition would call plant medicine, like ayahuasca, for example. Those traditions are beautiful traditions. I respect them greatly. And that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is we're going to be using the simple beat of a drum, a very repetitive, steady beat, which has a particular effect on the brain that neuroscientists have studied. What happens when we humans listen to a repetitive drumming beat, our brains begin to shift into a different brain state, into a sort of a theta wave pattern, which is associated with meditative practice in other ways. If you've ever seen those studies where they'll take a group of meditators and put electrodes on their brains and measure what's going on, what's happening in their brains is very similar to what's induced by the repetitive beat of a drum. So that's how we're going to practice. We're going to use that drum to help us kind of slip into a state where we can go on these journeys in our mind. So that's a big piece of it. And because we're using only that steady beat, you're always going to be in control of your consciousness. You're not going to be, out of control somehow. And one more note about safety I would add. So before my first journey, I was kind of nervous. I thought that maybe somehow if I managed to do the journey, I might sort of get lost outside of my body or something, and I would be like, I don't know where I am. I don't know how to find my way back. And so, just in case anybody else is worried about that too, I want to assure you that's not going to happen to you. It's never happened to me. It's never happened to any practitioner that I know. I have never lost track of my body in a journey. When I'm journeying, I know that I'm like sitting on the couch or lying down or whatever it is. It's just my mind that is traveling imaginatively. So that's another piece of safety that I just want to offer that reassurance to folks who are listening today. Yeah, I think that's enough for now. Thanks.
It kind of segues into the next question, which are what
Yeah.
are some techniques participants can expect to learn in your workshop for connecting
hmm
directly with spirit? You've kind of covered the drum, but
In this workshop, I'm going to be leading people through two classic beginner journeys. And let me actually say a little bit more now about the worldview behind shamanic practice. So again, going back to looking at the experience of shamanic practitioners all over the world, what you will find in their accounts and in the experiences of people who practice in core shamanism as well, is that in the sort of spirit realms that we journey to, it so happens that there seem to be three different places or realms or worlds that we can go to in journeying. Why three? I don't know. I have no idea. But that is the experience that people have had. And so I want to briefly tell you about what those three worlds are, because we're going to have a chance to visit two of them in this workshop. So first of all, we can imagine ourselves in the journey going down into the earth. And eventually in the journey, people typically have the experience of coming out into this other world, which my tradition calls the lower world because it feels like it's below us. Please bear in mind, all the language that I'm using is primarily metaphorical. Is it literally below us? No, not really. But, it feels like our human brains need some point of reference. So just, everything I'm saying is kind of metaphorical. We're doing the best we can with language. Anyway, but in the journey, you will have the opportunity to try going down to the lower world. In the lower world, the experience of practitioners all over the world for many generations has been there are lots of spirits in the lower world, and they are all fully compassionate, which means they don't all necessarily want to be your particular spirit guide, but nobody's going to do anything to hurt you in any way. And so that's a very safe place for beginners to go. In the lower world, a lot of the spirits, probably the majority of spirits, tend to show up in the form of animals. Why? I don't know. But that seems to be the case. So one of our journeys will be to go to the lower world to meet a spirit in animal form. So that's one thing that people will get to experience. Now, the second world that you'll have a chance to explore is called the upper world, because we get to the upper world by imagining that we are traveling up, 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 up. And eventually in the journey, people tend to have the experience reaching another sort of world layer of reality, getting a chance to interact with the spirits in that world. And again, in the upper world, all those spirits are fully compassionate. They're not all going to be your special spirits, but none of them are going to hurt you in any way. So we'll take this journey to the upper world to meet a teacher in human-ish form, and you'll have the opportunity to try to engage with that human form spirit. I'll just touch on the third realm that we know of in when we're practicing journeying. There is a realm called the middle world, which is in between upper and lower. And we're not going to spend any time there in this workshop because our experience has taught us that not all the spirits in the middle world are fully compassionate. Some are kind of tricksters. Some are like, they might not have your best interest at heart. So once you have some experience and you have some helping spirits to kind of show you around, you can safely go there. But it's not a place we want to take beginners to, just because it's just not yet, I would say about that. So to sum up, in this workshop, you're going to get to try two journeys, one to the lower world and one to the upper world, to meet an animal spirit and a human form teacher. So that's what people can expect.
So, question, if you've
Yes.
met your spirit in the lower world, you've met your
Hmm.
spirit in the upper world, if you then go to the middle world, can they come with you or are they completely
Oh, great
distinct?
question. Oh, in my experience, yeah, they can go wherever they want. So if I want to go to the middle world, for example, I'm going to
Mhm.
go down to the lower world first and say, "Hey, friends, could one of you come with me, please, to just make sure that everything stays safe?" And they'll be like, "Yep, let's
Mhm.
go." So, great question.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay. Oh, and how can shamanic journeying be integrated into daily life to enhance personal well-being and empowerment?
Yeah, well, that's the big question, right? Like, why do this? Besides curiosity, which is also a totally legitimate thing. So, yeah, I would say that as you go deeper into the practice and continue to journey, I think that what people start to discover, certainly what I have started to discover, is it's like the universe has your back. My experience of developing a relationship with my own helping spirits is not that bad things don't happen to me. I mean, of course, all sorts of things, positive and negative, and some very challenging, have come my way since I started to journey. It's not like life is always like hunky dory, but going through the tough stuff, I feel so much support. I feel like I'm not alone in what I'm going through. And I've heard many other people say that they experience that when they journey as well. It's like I think what people can realistically expect, I guess you would say, is like you get a sense of like basic trust. Like the world that we live in, it's hard and it's scary and it's confusing. But I think when people journey, you start to discover that there is a bigger reality of love and support and compassion that just holds us in this way that I can't even fully describe. Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. Let me shift gears a little bit and share a couple of practical things, because you might be wondering also about, okay, well, that sounds nice, but is there anything, are there any other like practical ways that this might change your life? And I would just say, yeah, there are a couple of things that I want to name that I've experienced as practical benefits. And one of them is I find that the way that my brain works, I'm a highly sensitive person, which means that, among other things, I tend to soak up a lot of energy and emotions from the people who are around me. Like, I'm not intending to, but people who, like me, who are highly sensitive, we're kind of spongy and we tend to soak up other people's stuff. And what I found is that it helps me to journey quite often to ask for help, like clearing out other people's stuff. Not that it's bad or harmful necessarily, but like I am healthier, I'm sort of more in myself, just cleaner if I can just let go of all that energy that doesn't belong to me. And I find that doing that in a journey state is one of the best ways I know to just sort of like do it clearing out. And so that's one of the things I personally journey on quite a lot. I also journey very frequently to just get some practical advice about stuff going on in my life. So if there's like a relationship thing that I'm struggling with, like if I'm not getting along with someone, I might journey to say like, how can I get along better with this person, or what do I need to sort out this relationship? And I get some really good advice. Professionally, also, as a minister, I journey to get support around sermon writing quite often. When I'm stuck and I just can't figure out what are the folks that I'm serving really need to hear, what would be really energizing, I get some great ideas in my journeys. As a professional, I just end up journeying to ask about like, should I do this or that? And again, I just get some really like very practical advice when I check in with my helping spirits. So that's something I very much encourage other people to do as well. So, yeah.
When you are journeying about another person, does a helping spirit, a different helping spirit come that might be their helping spirit? Or do your helping
Oh,
spirits tell you how?
oh, what an interesting question. And that gets into that gets into a really cool ethical question too, Fia. So one of the most important principles of my tradition is that we do not try to shamanically intervene in another person's consciousness without their permission, like ever. Like that's like a no-go. So when I talk about if I'm struggling in a relationship, I'm not going to journey to try to go change the other person. Like, oh, that would be so bad. In fact, my tradition would say that is evil. And so instead, I'm going to be saying, give me some advice about what I can do. And so I'm working with my helping spirits. I'm not trying to go find the other person's helping spirits. I wouldn't even necessarily, I probably wouldn't even know who they were. So yeah, that's really a good question. And that's part of what I want people to understand about what does it mean to practice ethically. So thanks.
What kind of community or support do participants typically find when engaging in shamanic journeying practices?
Yeah, interesting. What kind of community or support? I think there's two layers of that. There's two levels of community that I certainly want everybody to have access to. And so there's like human community, right? So on a just basic like human being doing a spiritual practice level, I always encourage beginning journeyers to try to connect up with some sort of ongoing shamanic journeying group if that's feeling helpful to them, so that you can be encouraged in your practice, so that you can be witnessed in the experiences that you're having, some of which might be quite remarkable, so that you can hear what other people are experiencing in their journeys. So that I think can be really, really supportive. And that's actually why we're going to be offering a follow-up group to this basic workshop. For people who take the beginning workshop, we're going to be offering a follow-up group so that people can get a little bit more foundation in their practice. And I found it can be really, really validating as beginners to have a place to take those questions that are coming up, especially a lot of people come up right away against the question, like, what I'm experiencing in my journeys, is it all in my head, right? Am I making this up? Most beginners go through a wondering like, I don't know if this is real. And so it can be really helpful to have a community of practitioners to just kind of work that out and just stay with it and see what emerges for you. So that's human community. I think it just can be really, really helpful so that you're not out there on your own just trying to figure it out. And then I also just want to name that there's an aspect of community that happens on like the spirit level. So as I have practiced over the years, my helping spirits, they feel like my friends. They're like my support community, and I check in with them almost every day. Just do a quick little mental kind of close my eyes and say like, "Hey, everybody," even if it's just a little hi. And I think having that sense of community has been really, really wonderful for me. And I hope that others will experience that as well.
So, based on your experience, what are some common transformations or breakthroughs participants might experience during or after the workshop?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I want to modulate people's expectations here a little bit because this is a beginner workshop. This may be the first time that someone's trying out this practice. So let me share with you a range of what people typically experience in a first workshop like this. Some people may take to the journey practice immediately. They may go do a journey and meet up with a compassionate, helping spirit who tells them something that just changes their life forever. Like that could happen. I've seen it happen many times, and like that's amazing and yay. And what I've also seen is that somebody who has never tried this practice tries it out and feels like, oh, nothing's happening. I'm not getting anywhere. I think I must be doing it wrong. And that too is a very normal experience. So I don't want to promise that if you take this workshop, you're going to have this amazing spiritual experience. That's out of my control. Maybe you will. I would love that for you. But I can't promise that you're going to have a profound experience. I think what I can promise is that you will learn the basic technique to do this practice. I'm going to be teaching people specific steps about you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And so, if you don't have an amazing experience right out the gate, you can continue to practice on your own or line up some support for yourself as you keep practicing. And everybody I've ever known who has kept practicing over time has come to have deep and meaningful experiences with this practice of shamanic journeying. So, yeah, I think that's the most important thing to understand. Hopefully, you'll have an amazing time, but if you don't, it doesn't mean you never will.
That's perfect. Oh, for those intrigued by shamanic journeying after listening to this, what steps would you recommend for exploring the practice further? I think you've already covered that basically.
Sure. Yeah, we've definitely touched on some things. Of course, I would love for folks to participate in this introductory workshop. It's going to be on September 29th. And also, anybody who participates in that, we'd love to welcome you into this follow-up group. We'll have 3-session follow-up group that I'll be leading afterwards. Other things, if the group format is just not really your cup of tea, I do a lot of one-on-one teaching and coaching work with folks. One of my very favorite things to do is shamanic coaching, where I work with people one-on-one, and in that modality, you bring a challenge in your life or a question that you want to explore or work on. And in the session, we both journey to our own helping spirits to ask for their insight on this question or challenge that you're bringing. And then we come back and I support you in exploring like what came up in the journey and what's your own sense of the situation and what you need, and then figuring out how you want to move forward. So that's just juicy, delightful thing that I love to do. And also, I'm happy to talk with folks who are not exactly sure what's going to be most helpful for them. So, if that's you, I just want to invite everybody to feel free to stop by my website, which is laurahortonludwig.com, and let's connect.
Is that Laura Horton Ludwig with a dash between
Oh, there is no dash. That's
no
right. Here,
dash?
I'll spell it out. So it's LauraHortonLudwig.com. No punctuation, just all run together. Thanks.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that your workshop is going to be September 29th between 4:30 and 6:30 Eastern time.
that's right.
And
That's
I
right.
certainly invite anyone listening to this to join that and the follow-ups that are scheduled. So are there any other things you would like to tell people before we close?
I think we've covered so much already today, Fia. So I think I just want to take a moment to wish whoever's listening just blessings on your own spiritual path, however it unfolds for you. Just may you find what you need to feel that deep connection with spirit that I would love everybody to have. So thank you.
Well, thank you for participating, and we'll see you on the 29th of September.
Sounds good. Thank you, Fia.
Sure.